players didn't show up to OTAs. And it's optional. It's not mandatory. You don't get fined for not coming. But boy, this is a team that's supposed to win the Super Bowl this year. They're supposed to be highly motivated to get on the field. And last year, a lot of their vets were here in OTAs. Christian McCaffrey was practicing. This year, he didn't even show up. Give a list of people who weren't there at all.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, Trent Williams, Chris Hubbard, who they signed last week, and Malik Collins, who they traded for to replace Eric Armstead. Those were the guys who just didn't show up and weren't injured. That's interesting.
And when that said,
what do you think of that?
Yeah, and okay, this is a very complicated topic, so let's go real slow on this. My initial reaction is twofold. One, it's the first OTAs. Who cares? There's a lot of time to go. The other is what OTAs are for, and all this preseason stuff is sure to practice, but more important, it's team building. You're building a team. Every year is a new team with a new spirit, a new tone, and all of that. And my initial reaction is, get your tush in there. Brock Purdy came. Nick Bosa came. You're telling me that there's a guy who's been on the team a week and he didn't even show up?
Yeah, Chris Hubbard.
I mean, wouldn't you, Iggy, if you were new on a team, wouldn't you be the first one out of the locker room onto the field to show, I want to be a 49er, I want to contribute, and I want to help build a team? So part of me, is condemning certain people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you said Trent Williams didn't show up. But he doesn't ever, right? I mean, he doesn't show up. Okay, Here's the thing with him. He doesn't need to show up. He's an old guy. Everybody knows he'll be great. Now, would it be better if he showed up? Of course it would. But I don't think anybody's going to penalize him for it or talk behind his back. So, okay. So my initial reaction is, you're trying to build a team. This is a team-building activity. The new guys should certainly be there. And who were some veterans who didn't play today?
Christian McCaffrey. Well, Brandon Ayuk, we know he's got a grievance. Jawan Jennings apparently has a grievance as well. Didn't show up. Christian McCaffrey didn't even, George Kittle didn't practice because he's injured, but he was there to watch. Fred Warner didn't practice because he's so important, but he was there to watch and coach. McCaffrey didn't even show up. He was practicing last year because he had so much to prove.
Right. And all of a sudden you're not there. And,
I
don't know, if I'm in the locker room, I'm thinking, I'm a second string offensive lineman or third, and I'm thinking I'm trying to make the team. And maybe it would be nice if McCaffrey, he wouldn't have to play all the plays. Fred Warner, I'd like him to be on the field too. I mean, what is this? Wait, it's not Club Med.
No.
It's not Club 49er. It is a football team.
Fred Warner acts like he's graduated beyond OTAs. No.
Yeah.
If you want to win the Super Bowl, you got to go the extra mile. And it seemed like last year, more of them did. The attitude was, the only reason they didn't win the Super Bowl is because Brock Purdy got injured, and they were going to come back and prove that, and they were going to have a hot start and get the number 1 seed, and they accomplished all of that. And then they still lost the Super Bowl, and it wasn't any one player's fault. And now it just feels like a much different tone, attitude, vibe, whatever you want to call it.
So last year in OTAs, a lot of people participated because they had a lot to prove, and they wanted to prove that they were really could have been a Super Bowl champ, but the quarterback got hurt by Philadelphia, and so there was a sense. Hold on, let's use some words. Last year there was a sense of urgency, a sense of commitment, a sense of where we are a team and we're going to prove ourselves. And this year, you're telling me it felt entirely different. It felt like, if you come, you come. If you don't come, you come. What's the big deal? Well, that's a big difference. Iggy, that's a big difference.
Huge. Because last year, when everyone was coming and Christian McCaffrey was practicing so hard, like they got all this praise. Like, wow, they don't even have to be here. And look at how driven they are for their goal. This year, it's like, well, they didn't show up, but hey, it's optional. It's not a big deal. It's a whole different attitude. So why?
Okay. I want to emphasize, I think it's a big deal. And I know a lot of 49er fans will say that Iggy and I are making a big deal out of nothing and they're going to win the Super Bowl and all that. I don't think it's a way to start a season. Okay. So let's move on because there's more to talk about. The question is, why didn't they show up, right? Okay. I think there are two groups of people. Let's talk about the ones who didn't show up but really should have shown up. You're telling me there's a guy who took over for Armstead and he didn't show up. What's his name?
Malik Collins. Malik Collins.
He didn't show up. He
No.
wasn't even there?
No.
Okay. And
he, like he wants his kids to graduate first before he comes here.
Oh, so hold on. So he's staying home for his kid's graduation?
Yeah.
You know, Iggy, I give no. I give him that. Tomorrow we're going to my grandson's and Iggy's nephew's graduation from middle school. I think that's fair. I don't want to I didn't know that. I don't want to put the guy down for that. Anyway, there's another group that is more important, that either didn't show up or didn't participate, like McCaffrey. That's a big deal because McCaffrey is one of these guys who's always practicing. He's so intense, and all of a sudden he's in a hammock, reading a book and having a nice tea, and I guess Kittle is hurt, but Fred Warner is standing there like he's an assistant coach. When did he graduate? And who are some of the others that didn't show and might have shown?
Well, Trent Williams didn't show, and some guys are hurt. So think about how many starters from the offense weren't out there. McCaffrey, Trent Williams, Jake Brendel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings. Was that 6 guys? 5 guys? Mm-hmm. It's like half the offense wasn't there.
What about on defense?
On defense, Greenlaw's hurt. Fred Warner was watching. Malik Collins is waiting for his kid to graduate. Travarius Ward is hurt. Talanoa Hufanga still coming back from injury. So like half the defense was gone. The team, it was the JV Niners today, the B team.
Okay. I want to say you're mentioning a lot of them are currently hurt. In the past, the Niners have had trouble with injury. They haven't even hit each other yet, and they got a lot of injuries. Let me say, it's not something that I think is drastic, but I notice it. It makes me think.
Yeah.
I notice it, Iggy.
Yeah, I mean,
I notice that a lot of these guys are hurt.
We know that the team is one of the oldest in the league, if not the oldest. They have 18 players who are older than 30. We know that they've played 60 games in the last 3 years. That's more than any other team in the league. Logic says this is a team that could have an issue with injuries. And already they have an issue with injuries.
Yeah, like how is Kittle hurt? What's he hurt about?
He had off-season surgery to repair a core muscle. Same with Travarius Ward.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And then you wouldn't want to risk it with them. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But in any event, I do think it's worth noticing that a lot of key players are injured, and it's something to monitor. Fair enough?
Yeah. I mean, the center has knee tendonitis. He's 31. That doesn't sound great. It seems like if they had known he had knee tendonitis, they might have gotten a different center.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but let's go back to the attendance for a second. We know who's hurt. Brandon Ayuk not showing up. We know he's not going to practice without a new contract, but to not even show up, he could have been there as an observer or a coach to show how committed he is. He didn't do that. Jawan Jennings didn't even. What is Jawan Jennings' issue?
I have no
idea. That's incredible to me.
And maybe he feels they're not offering him enough money.
Yes. I don't look, who knows what the issue is. I think big picture though, it's not just that the Niners they don't have as much urgency as last year. I feel like the way they lost the Super Bowl left such a disappointing emotion inside them that they almost can't be around each other right now. And maybe they're looking at maybe this is a bit of a slap in the face to the coach. I mean, can we say that?
Yeah, I think, Iggy, this is the deep down key point, and I'm
Yeah.
glad you're bringing it up. So let me try to articulate it. If I don't do it well, help me out. Last year, they came to OTAs and they were really committed and really worked hard. They played very hard during the season, and they were acknowledged to be the best roster in the league. A lot of people think they have the best coach in the league, and they didn't win the Super Bowl. In fact, what happened was the coach, Kyle Shanahan, blew it in the second half. You can say whatever you want to say. It wasn't his fault. He's really a genius. Blew it in the second half, and he has a history of doing that. So I'm going to pretend I'm a player on the team and I'm a veteran. I broke my chops last season.
Mhm.
We should have won the Super Bowl, and this guy blew it for us. After all the work we did, why the hell am I going to come to OTAs and suffer? It's suffering. Football practice is a lot of suffering, and it's hot down there. I don't want to do it. It didn't work last year. You know what? I'm going to slide a little bit because if we get into the Super Bowl again, I don't have confidence in Kyle again. He blew it for the whole locker room. So I'm not going to be committed the way I was last year because I'm disenchanted and I'm a little depressed. What do you think of that analysis, Iggy?
I think that's dead on. I think that's the Super Bowl hangover right there. And I think the Niners have a bad case of it because they can't write it off like, well, there's this one reason, Brock Purdy got hurt or Jimmy was our quarterback, but he's gone now. We got Brock. Like, nah, you had the whole team. You were 2-point favorites, 2.5-point favorites. You had the lead, and everyone kind of knows Kyle did it again. Choked. So hard to be as enthusiastic about the operation this year. It's year 8 of Kyle Shanahan. It's year 8 of him. This is the last year George Seifert had. A lot of coaches don't make it this far without a Super Bowl victory. And there's been a lot of faith and trust and belief from his players. And I wonder how much longer he can keep that going.
Seifert only had 8 seasons.
That's it.
He won 2
and
Super
he won
Bowls.
2 Super Bowls. Would he have made it 8 years without 2, without even 1? No.
Eddie, I've told you, Eddie would have fired Kyle Shanahan a while ago. No question about it. He hasn't produced. He's produced, but he hasn't really produced. And the people who make the case for him, he's got us in the playoffs. He didn't win a Super Bowl, and he blows Super Bowls, and he's done it twice for the 49ers. So, Iggy, what I'm saying is, I think there's a certain. I'm not with the team, but I think there must be a certain weariness, loss of confidence, loss of belief in the coach, and it's reflected in who's attending or the relatively poor attendance of the 49ers when they should be really kicking butt.
Now, there were 2 superstars on the team, highly paid players who showed up. That was kind of surprising. Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa. So let's talk about them for a second. Why did those 2 show up? Deebo in particular, he got so much criticism for his play in the Super Bowl. They drafted what most people feel is his replacement, and they shopped him during the draft. Is it possible that all 3 of those things have brought out the best in him, and now he has something to prove?
Yes, and good for him.
Yeah.
Good for the Niners and good for him.
Yes. So that's a good development from today. Bosa's interesting. Bosa's never come to OTAs. Bosa prefers to stay in Florida and do his own thing, and he really had a down year last year. And now that we know that all these players didn't show up, I almost wonder if Kyle went to Bosa and was like, look, man, we need you there. Please come to OTAs. Like, if you don't show up, then it really looks like a vote of no confidence from all the players. But if you show up, then you can be the captain and the leader that we're paying you to be. So I almost wonder if the Niners were like, look, dude, we've given you everything you want, all the money. You like Nick Sorensen? Great. He's a defensive coordinator. Can you show up to OTAs, please? So he came.
I love it.
His brother showed up to Chargers OTAs, too. That's another guy who would never go to OTAs. But Jim Harbaugh's in town, and I guess he got Joey Bosa to show up.
And I'll tell you what. If Joey Bosa didn't show up, Harbaugh would remember.
Yep.
Harbaugh, he'd have something to say to Joey Bosa.
That's right.
Harbaugh, I'm going to say it again. I don't know that Harbaugh's a better coach than Kyle, although he may be, but he's a better leader,
He's a better team builder.
team builder and leader.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Harbaugh Kyle's still kind of coaching in Harbaugh's shadow because Harbaugh was here and pushed out. Harbaugh gets Joey Bosa to show up. Well, Kyle now has to get Nick Bosa to show up. Has to.
Fascinating.
Has to.
Fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Pretty
So hey, look,
pleased.
good for Nick for showing up, but I think there's a lot that went into that.
Yeah.
Like, almost like, do you really need to give him a round of applause for showing up? Like you're supposed to. You make $34 million a year. It's the least you can do.
He makes $34
Yes.
million a year?
Uh-huh. Yep.
No, I think he's underpaid. Could I have some of that?
He should hold out, renegotiate.
Iggy, is that $2 million a game?
Yeah. $2 million a game. I don't see how any non-quarterback could be worth that.
That's a lot of money.
10.5 sacks last year he had.
He must have a lot. I drive in a 13-year-old Prius. He must have a lot of nice cars.
Yeah. You got to get a new car.
I know.
If you could get any car you wanted, Dad, money wasn't an issue, what would you get?
A Prius. Can I say something? You and your mom and your brother, you're Californians and you grew up with cars and you love cars. My parents didn't. I never had a car. We never in my family had a car. I always went around on the subway in Brooklyn or the buses. I didn't get a car until I came out to Stanford when I was almost 21, and I had to learn to drive the summer before, the summer of 66, because I never had driven a car. So it doesn't, to me, it doesn't mean anything. I like a Prius. It doesn't have any guts, but you get good gas mileage, and I like the idea of a hybrid. What car would you get?
I think I'm going to sell my Stinger.
Okay.
I think I'm going to sell the Stinger because it's getting to about 50,000 miles. And I think I'm going to buy a Mustang, like a 2-door car.
I love it.
I've always wanted a Mustang.
Are they good?
I like Mustangs. I mean, I don't know how long I don't really know that much about American cars right now. Maybe they don't last 15 years, but I'm probably going to sell it at 50,000 miles. Might be fun.
Mustang.
What kind of car did you have when you were my age?
Oh, I had at your age?
Yeah.
Oh, at 36, I had a Honda Accord.
That's a nice car.
It was okay. Your mom and I named it Kenny. We never called it that. It was Kenny.
You had Kenny by that time?
I'm reasonably sure we had.
What did you have before Kenny?
I had a little. It was called a Datsun at that time, and I had a little, like a 2-door Datsun with a stick shift, and I called it Billy.
That's hot.
Yeah, I've never had a good car in my whole life.
Well, you're in New Yorker. You're not supposed to.